This is the next part of the process. The sugary water comes from the cooler into the two fermentation vessels here. They're both made of Oregon pine. They're about 40 years old, so they've been well looked after, so they're probably mid-life, I would say. If you look after them, they'll last a long time. They used to be made of larch shear at one time, but because all the big larch trees have been cut down in Scotland, the last ones came from the States. We put about 6,500 litres of wort from the mash tun in here, and then we add 25 kilos of yeast, and over 48 hours we get a fermentation, and we end up really with 6,500 litres of real ale, and it looks like creamy beer. Temperature going in here is between 18 and 20 centigrade, and that's a fine temperature for the aesthetic atmosphere in this building. We're not too bothered by CO2, which is given off by the fermentation for whatever reason. I think it's because we've got big open space here, and in other distilleries the CO2 can be a problem, and many of the distilleries with multi-units of these have to pipe it away from the workers. But because we only have one fermentation going hard in a 12-hour period, it's not a major problem here.
Switchers? Have you got switchers on these?
We have switchers, but I don't like to see switchers on wooden washbacks because I have visions of them moving, and they do cause a lot of instability and hook problems and things. So I've really got them disconnected, to be honest. And
you don't use the old-fashioned technique of employing small boys to thrash the foam back?
Inside the... No, it's our liquid size inside is carefully timed that even on maximum growth of foam, it doesn't come over the top. I've seen it once over the top here in 3 years, but it's not something that's difficult to control. I mean, we're not at the days when I came into the industry first. There's buckets of soft soap across the top of the washback, which I mean couldn't have been good for the spirit or anything. I could never understand that. I never came to terms with that at all. But the switchers are. There's other ways of controlling the foaming, I think, rather than using switchers. I can remember at Glenlivet, the washbacks used to be heaving and moving on their foundations, and they're always in trouble with hoops and things like that. But as you want to stay away from that. Anyway, remember, there's only 3 of us here. We can't afford things like that.
Because in the days of less stable yeasts, you apparently used to get furious fermentation sometimes, and the whole washback will rot.
That's right. I mean, I think when yeast was less controllable, or you were using large, everybody believed at one time that the more yeast you added, the better the fermentation, which is not true, of course. I mean, you've got to have the correct yeast ratio, but they used to, if it wasn't fast enough, you just chuck in more yeast, and a lot of the activity was overemphasized. It's like over-engineering, if you like, far too much yeast. And all it did was end up at the bottom of the washback and give you a problem in the stills.
Where do you stand, Iain, on the wooden washbacks as against stainless steel washbacks?
Well, having run distilleries of both types, where the mighty Glenlivet was wooden, and the Alta Bain and the Braes and Lefroy were all stainless steel. The only advantage is that stainless steel ones probably last longer and they're easier to keep clean. But you've got to remember that bacteria is flavour, and so as long as you keep it clean, it's a compromise between infection and the flavour. All the samples that the Heriot they come here to take them, because the scientists there, they believe that a lot of the character of the spirit has been lost in stainless steel vessels. Now, it's difficult for us, I'm just a whiskey maker, to know if that's true or not, but there may be an element of truth in it, but lots of distilleries even had half and half, and these distilleries have all succumbed, and they're all stainless steel now. But that's their theory, is that wooden washbacks give you a warmer fermentation, so you might have to adjust your temperature lower sooner in the summertime, because you've not got a massive metal to cool. I think there's a an element of character. And wood's very traditional, and
Yeah.
I've even seen distilleries with stainless steel washbacks where they've actually clad it with wood to give the impression it's wood. Yeah. But if I was given a choice, I think I would opt for wood. Much more traditional.
Yeah.